The Finding Purpose podcast is proudly brought to you by Relive the Moments, founded by visionary entrepreneur John Lim. We live in a world where it's easy to capture memories, but Relive the Moments makes it effortless to re-experience and share them. From NFC-enabled tap coasters and photo frames to interactive video cards, Relive the Moments turns everyday objects into unforgettable tap-to-experience keepsakes. Imagine gifting a wedding guest a coaster that instantly opens your highlight reel, or giving your event sponsors a custom frame that tells your story with just one tap. Whether you're celebrating a milestone, planning a wedding, honoring a legacy, or elevating a brand experience, Relive the Moments is the bridge between the past and present, between memory and connection. It's not just a product, it's an experience. Visit www.relivethemoments.com and use promo code PURPOSE for 25% off your first order. Let's bring your memories to life, one tap at a time.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Finding Purpose podcast. I'm your host, Adam Vora, and I'm so grateful to have you here. This podcast is all about exploring the journeys of incredible individuals, people who have faced adversity, found their purpose, and are now making an impact in their communities. But it's also about my journey. Over the years, I've faced my own obstacles, moments of doubt, and struggles with identity. Through it all, I found my purpose in giving back, creating a space where people can detach from the negative emotions and stigmas they may associate with their own stories, just like I did with mine. Here, we have real conversations about growth, resilience, and transformation. Whether you're searching for direction, striving for personal development, or simply looking for a place to feel seen and understood, this is for you. So if these conversations resonate with you, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and connect with us on social media. Now let's dive into today's episode.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Finding Purpose podcast. I'm Adam, and I appreciate you being here. Whether you're listening on Apple Podcasts or watching on the official YouTube channel of the Finding Purpose podcast, thank you for your continued support. If you haven't already, please subscribe, leave a review, and share. It helps us keep growing this purpose-driven community. Last week's episode with Ginger Richardson reminded us of the power of resilience, of doing hard things, finding strength through discomfort, and creating connection through healing. And today's guest embodies that same kind of strength and passion in her own way. Laura Beth Collinson is a top-producing real estate agent with Carl Guild & Associates based in Central Connecticut. She's a single mother of two and a powerful advocate for self-development and business growth. Her story is built on grit, reinvention, and the courage to keep showing up for herself, no matter what life throws her way. Before real estate, Laura spent 12 years in the restaurant industry, helping open 3 restaurants, and experienced that forged her resilience and relentless work ethic. Today, she channels that same drive into helping others identify their passions, reach their goals, and unlock what's possible both personally and professionally. Her newest venture, helping roofing and other service-based companies launch solar divisions, expanding her impact as both a business developer and a purpose advocate. This conversation is about growth, courage, and the relentless pursuit of better. So, thank you.
Thank you.
How was that?
That was
I figured I summed up everything that you sent to me in a good way. And, this has been much in the making. I ran into you at the restaurant with Maria, and, I actually did end up having Maria on.
I saw, yeah.
And I'm so glad that we were finally able to connect because, frankly, I don't really know much about you. I know what you do.
Yeah.
But I'd love to kind of just start at the beginning and just kind of tell me about, where you grew up, how that was, and then we can kind of go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up in well, thank you so much for that wonderful intro. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I think you captured me very well and what my intentions are for sure. I grew up in a really small town. I was a soccer player for most of my career from growing up from 5 to high school. So I think I grew a lot of teamwork ethic there, and just that was a lot of my drive. I was able to channel a lot of my intensity and passion through that. And I left home at a very early age and got really into the restaurant business very young, and grew in that for a long, long time, opening different restaurants and working with different teams and learning about time efficiency, but also definitely customer experience, as you have like somebody for an hour and a half or 2 hours for dinner, and you're just trying to enhance their experience with really fine detail, awareness, and making sure that you can kind of go above and beyond so that they left remembering, the time that they had there, not just the food that they ate, but wow, I really felt good leaving there. So I really connected with that always in restaurant work, and just a high paced environment. I always do well in,
Yeah, it's funny because one of our first conversations, I think you talked about how you like left home really early and that you just kind of jumped into the workforce. What were the factors that caused that? Where you were like, all right, like I need to just kind of jump into the work and just forge my own path?
Yeah, I mean, my parents were we kind of grew up in a higher end community, but we were
Where'd you go?
In Killingworth, but my father was a blue collar worker, and it was very like, hey, like when you turn 18, like you're going to go to college, or like you're going to get a job or move out, or, it was very like those were your options. And I never was very good at the school aspect of school. Like, like I was definitely the freshman that started varsity that was getting the D+ or the C's just to be able to start, and I was just better on the field. And I was just better at like, and not that I'm not incredibly smart, but I just think in that environment, test taking, that kind of stuff was not my primary focus. So, I think I always knew that when that time came, like I was either going to go to college or like just go right into the workforce. And I had some pending scholarships. I did get into a car wreck and couldn't really fulfill those scholarships going into college for soccer. And so I really had a choice. It was like, okay, well, where do I start? And I had always been working in restaurants even through high school. And so I just kind of really engaged full time, couple different restaurants at a time, and just really started there. And, I'm grateful for that because it made things kind of, pretty, I was very independent from an early age. And, it made me have to really go in 100%. There wasn't a net in my life.
Totally.
I'm the net.
I mean, I think, that obviously is something where, was soccer like a dream?
For sure. Absolutely. It was something, I played 5 teams a year my whole life, so it was one of those, we have pivotal moments in our life, right? Whether they're life obstacles that come our way that we don't realize they're going to happen, and they're, course correction. And, maybe at the time it's hardship and it's difficulty, but, that course corrected me into the workforce where I thought maybe I was going to go to college on a scholarship. It was definitely, it was a blow, as far as like what direction I was passionate about and had been really committed to pursuing for a very, very long time in my life. But it landed me into a field that I was able to create an incredible skill set. Like, I mean, restaurant industry is such an incredible skill set. Like,
So, it's funny because I've actually, obviously we met at the restaurant.
Right.
And I worked in restaurants for 15 years and obviously still do, at a part-time basis. But one of the things that I attribute a lot of the skill set that I was able to develop is to that experience. And I'm a firm believer that everyone should work in a restaurant at some point in their life. What are some of the skill sets that the restaurant industry planted that obviously blossomed through other avenues in your career?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Obviously efficiency, but I think, for scanning a dining room, making a list in my head of like this detail, going back into the kitchen, getting those requests, coming out, being able to really manage 10 or 12 tables at a time in different places, like one's getting appetizers, one's getting dessert, and in my real estate, a lot of what I am good at is getting ahead of the fires, like seeing what the finish line is, what are the possibilities and avenues where there could be obstacles or things that could cause a problem for for us to get to closing, or even just emotionally, what are dynamics and negotiations where, I need to present something in a certain way so that it's received in a certain way. That definitely helped when like someone got the wrong meal or something like that. Like, how did you, adjust to that and be able to adapt on the spot? And just working with people in high stress environments. I think that was one of the most, we in any restaurant that I was a part of, we were a loving, dysfunctional, crazy family,
Yep.
and we would be like at each other's throats. And at the end of the night, we'd all have family meal and we'd all, laugh and have fun but high stress environments. And, what I learned was that, there is a certain posture that comes out when people are in high stress situations, and it taught me to stay calm, thorough, and really streamline my focus to what can get done and how to get that done. And in dealing with businesses in business development and, with clients, I deal with clients that are in some of the highest stresses. Buying a house is stressful regardless, whether it's good stress or you're going through a divorce or someone passed away or, you're selling and buying. These are really stressful things. You're buying one of the biggest assets that we ever invest in. You pulled together your life savings, whatever it may look like. You're transitioning children into a new school. There's just so many aspects. And, sometimes clients will come into the transaction one way and in the middle when it's the most stressful, they're different. And I've gotten really, really good in at holding that, being that vessel, like not taking the stress as a punching bag, but holding that space, and, I've done that with my children, like how can I hold the space for where you're at? It's less about me guiding you necessarily, or not even guiding, but it's less of me about trying to get the solution now. And a lot of what I do in a lot of arenas is let me hold the space. What is your capability here? And how can I meet you and support you in your capabilities? Yeah. Because I spent a long time in my life trying to make people have capabilities or have different capacity than what they're capable of. And that causes a lot of harm. Yeah. It can.
It's so true. And it's funny because, my experience in the restaurant industry obviously served me well and provided me with those same tools as well. But one of the things for me, it made me understand people at a different level, which is really important. And it also exposed to me some of the greatest parts of people. Yeah. And frankly, some of the worst parts of people.
Absolutely.
And that is something that, in the beginning was probably a rude awakening. But it also made me able to kind of identify, hey, like, it's not me.
Right.
It's them.
Yeah.
And I think oftentimes you got to kind of have thick skin. And, when you take that understanding of people into, quote unquote, the real world, not to say the restaurants aren't, because they are, but when you take that out into the real world, and you have that thick skin that the restaurant industry kind of gives you, you're a lot more durable when it comes to the type of personalities that you're going to come across. It just taught me a lot about people.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 1,000%. And I think like, having that space, right? Like building that space that like where you're able to kind of, look at the person for what they're bringing to the table, not take it personally, because that's a huge aspect of it. Like, am I allowing enough space for growth? Right. Yeah. Because it's really easy for me to get into production mode and grind mode and go. And I can get blindsided vision in what my intentions are. And I don't allow the full harmonic part of that to be like displayed. Like, what is that? What do you need in this transaction? Because sometimes that comes as like, whoa, like, and it's hard to not take it personally. And you have to take that space, like you're saying, where it's like you can kind of just see people for where they're at and not like take it on. And the restaurant industry absolutely taught me that on a lot of levels.
Yeah. Well, it's funny too, because you're talking about the two most intimate human needs, food and shelter.
Yeah, for sure.
Those are some things that people have an emotional connection to as well. And, oftentimes, working in a restaurant and then working also with business owners and working with people one-on-one, when people are comfortable with you, they will share things that they otherwise wouldn't.
Absolutely.
And for me, that's usually an indicator that this relationship is going in the right direction, no matter how uncomfortable whatever they might be sharing with me is.
Mm-hmm.
They're indicating to me that they trust me.
Absolutely.
They're indicating to me that they look at me as a safe space.
Yep.
And frankly, once those type of conversations happen, I'm pretty confident that I'm going to get their business, but B, this is a long-term relationship that can be proved to be profitable for both of us. And now they trust my recommendations when it comes to other things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really the type of relationships that I like to lean into.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, where sometimes I need to understand that and check myself and not be transactional, because I think nowadays people get pushed away from transactional salespeople or transactional people in general.
Yeah.
And
well,
because
our culture is significantly transactional. Like everywhere that we are functioning is a transaction. So I agree with you. It's like humanizing the experience for the individual, because everywhere we look is a bill being paid or this or that or this. And it's like, it's so easy. And just with technology and everything that's taking off, it's so easy for everyone just to feel like, this is your service, this is what I'm getting, da da da. And it's like we're missing the aspect of the beauty of, like, we never know. Like I was at a restaurant, you were waiting on us. Like, here we are talking on a podcast, we connected. Like, if we had entered that with that transactional mindset and not had led with the connection of our heart and openness, I wouldn't be here right now.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what I love, you know?
Well, it's funny because in the restaurant industry, they call those people order takers, right?
Right.
And if you go into the real world, there are order takers in the real world. And sure, you know, maybe they're using that traditional method of, you know, how many contacts they make a week, they're whatever. But like, are they establishing relationships that can generate more business? And, you know, my approach is, like, I also know when it is a client and I need to just take their order.
Right, of course.
You know, and you'll come across those type of people. But I lean into the relationships where, okay, like, I know you have 2 kids. You know, I know... Right. You know, you're comfortable sharing with me, you know, stories about you and your family. You know, you're going on vacation. I know more about you than just what you do and what your brand is.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, those are the relationships that I continue to reach out to when, hey, I'm doing this. Like, I'd love for you to be involved.
Right.
Because I know the caliber of person that I'm working with.
Absolutely.
You know, but I try not to be an order taker when it comes to the things that I do, especially when it's, you know, the events and obviously with the podcast, you know, like I like to know people at a deeper level.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely. Because there's so much opportunity there and we learn so much too. And listen, we're all going through things. We're all struggling in some regard, no matter how we present, you know, and I use the word struggling, not necessarily in a bad thing. I have learned my greatest assets and attributes through, like, some of my deep grief and transitions in life. And that's where you really can authentically relate to people, where you talk about that safe zone. Like, hey, we're in the safe zone. Like, let's disarm it. You know, out there's a lot of pressure and we got to do this and we got to do that and we got to get the kids ready and we got to pay the bills and we got to produce and grind. And it's like, hey, how are you?
Yeah.
Like, how's everything going?
Yeah.
You know, how do you feel today? Because I've been in a space in my business where, you know, even with the greatest intentions of purpose of helping people, you know, I've always looked at my real estate business as a relationship, like transition advocacy, truly, you know, that I'm helping people transition and advocating through that transition. I feel that it's less sales and more relationships, but you can get very disconnected from that when it's just go, grind, just like the real estate, just like the restaurant. It's like you're on a Saturday night at 7:20, like, you're not thinking about how Susan on table 12 is doing. You're just trying to get her salmon. Like, you know, we all can get wrapped up in the atmosphere of what we're doing, but slowing down and creating that space, I think that's where the magic space, that flow state is, where you're like, wow, what is it? How did I run into this person? What can we connect to? Because I do believe that, you know, there's so much in the air as far as, you know, what, you know, you align with people and you're like, wow, I've had similar experiences, or I just went through that. Like, I've gone through so many things, and then the next wave of people I'm introduced are going through the exact same thing, you know, and that's not by mistake. That's part of the healing process.
Yeah. One of the things that you just mentioned is that you had gone through periods that you were tested, periods of grief, periods of just, you know, hardship. If you can maybe elaborate a little bit on that, because I think that really allows my audience to kind of have a better connection with you because many of the people who listen to this podcast might be in that period of their time.
Absolutely.
And I'm curious to hear your story on how you were able to navigate through it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, as I came from the restaurant business, I think one of my greatest goals and dreams in life was to be a mom, right? And around me growing up, I really only had like stay-at-home moms as role models, right? So I had always put that purpose or that dream like on a pedestal, that like that's all I'm going to be. I just want to be a stay-at-home mom. And I'm so grateful that, that came true, but it was definitely an awakening for me when I was a stay-at-home mom, kind of running a real estate business, like 1 or 2 transactions a year. It was just bonus income for our family, 2 under 2. And I wasn't fulfilled. I had put this dream on such a pedestal that this was it. I was going to be so happy here. And it wasn't that I wasn't happy to be around my children, but for me, I wasn't fulfilled there. And I had to make a change and, begin to build that career. And things kind of switched in our family dynamic that, we had to shut down a business through COVID. And that's really when I took the lead as the provider in the family and built my business career. And I was in this, high pressure situation where we had just shut down a butcher shop business. And it was like, okay, like you have 3 to 6 months to really like make income and provide. And I put everything I had into my career. And I was really grateful that I was able to elevate, to have, to just know that that was something that I could do. That was something that I didn't have examples of in my life. So I just never believed that I could do both, that I could do all things, that I could get some of my, purpose fulfilled and be a mother. And what my motherhood, you go into motherhood in a certain way and it changes who you are forever. And then you have to become somebody different. And I think that that's something we don't talk about in parenthood in general, that like you do change, you change, and you have to figure out who you are on the other side of having a child. And for me today, it's being, a career-driven, big vision, dream-based individual. But, we had different dreams, the father of my children and I. And so when they were 4 and 2, I had made that, real estate put me in a position of financial choice. And I did make that choice to leave. And it was a hard choice. And I remember searching my soul for 2 weeks and really like doing nothing but like prayer, meditation, yoga, being like, is this, do we not line up for what my needs are and what his needs are, and what he wants in life and what I want in life, and making that decision thoroughly to be like, yeah, it's not, we don't want the same things anymore. And so I did leave when they were 4 and 2. And so that was a grieving process, just because the dream, if you will, took different shape. It doesn't mean that I didn't like grieve what I originally wanted. But the dream that I put on the pedestal originally of this like, family unit and holidays and decorating for Christmas, all that kind of stuff, and not being like a split family, like it's we've separated. We were never married, but we separated about 3.5 years ago. And, I was still coming out of that grief, into last year. And like, what does that look like? What does my family unit look like? Maybe it looks like having support with a nanny, or maybe it looks like me working less. What are my priorities look like? And I think I learned that like it was okay to have some grievances there. I couldn't just put on, the face of, well, this is what we are, and or bury myself in work. There had to be this big growth thing. And there was a lot of like feeling less than, or a lot of like, guilt of not being around for some very big moments in my children's lives, because I was building something that we could have a foundation to stand on, so I could confidently, be secure for their future and things, making those sacrifices.
I love how you talk about the transition from pre-motherhood and post-motherhood, because you're right, you do become a different person, I think, any parent. Yeah. And I also like how you're brave enough to acknowledge that there's a grieving process when there is a quote unquote end to a chapter in your life. And I think a lot of people do sit in that moment of change and big change, and they don't know what to call it.
Yeah.
And they confuse themselves and they try to rationalize or they second guess themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
And really, that's what it is. It's grief. I talk about that a lot when it comes to, it's well documented that I suffered from drugs and alcoholism. Getting sober was one of the hugest grieving processes for me because I was essentially not only saying goodbye to a lifestyle, but I was saying goodbye to the person who I once was.
Yeah, absolutely.
And once I was really able to acknowledge it as, okay, this is grief that I'm going through this process because there is all the components that come with grief, the bargaining, the denial, the depression, the
identity
anger,
crisis,
everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And then, it really comes down to, hey, like the acceptance. I talk about acceptance all the time because for me, acceptance is something, that I got to continue to practice on a daily basis. It's also something that I need to get better at. And usually when I'm in a very accepting space, good things happen. When I try to fight things, it doesn't really work.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I call it kind of sitting in the hallway. You know what I mean? Like I'm sitting in the hallway, and I'm waiting for that next door, that next window. And like, listen, there are people that I thought would sit in the hallway with me in those certain life transitions, and they're not there. They are not there anymore. Like there's different chapters that we grieve different things that we thought we were going to process with certain people, and they're not there. Things are removed sometimes to make that space. And there's some hallways that I have to sit alone, and those are some of the deepest faith building and like belief in myself that I've ever had, where it's like, wow, I can feel all of this and still feel powerful and confident and know that I am walking the path that's destined for me. Because when I had to make that decision to leave when they were 4 and 2 and to be like, listen, I have these dreams and goals that I want for myself and my family. Do I make a decision to stay so that I can keep their idea alive, because of course that's important to a young child? Or do I continue innately being driven to what my greater purpose is, which is getting through the other side and being with things that I align with, And I think that's in every aspect of life. And people align with you in certain aspects, in certain chapters, in certain businesses, and in certain ways. And it's also okay for them to just align with you right there. And I spent a lot of time, right, like holding on or trying to kind of like, well, align with me over here too. Let's grow in this direction. And it's okay to be like, hey, awesome. I'm so glad that we could meet in that space. But yeah, I think the hallway is so important. I think it's so important, and it's attached to so much. I mean, there'd be times where I'd be like in a grieving state and be like, why does this hurt so much? And it's like, oh, well, I'm grieving every single time that I didn't stand up for myself. I'm grieving every single time a dream didn't work out. Every time I missed a soccer goal. There are things that I have compressed deeply to move on into a production site, or, to just as a shield, let me just keep going. I don't want to feel, I can't break right now. In the first year I left, I worked harder than I've ever, because I couldn't slow down to feel it, And then the next year, I had to sit in it, and I had to sit with my children and talk to them deeply about how they felt in this transition and why are mommy and daddy not together. But in the beginning of that hallway, I could not sit in the hallway. I had to run as fast as I could. Yeah, I was pacing, you know what I mean? Because I felt like I was going to break, So I think that, and then people came into my life that understood that, and people stood, you really get clarity in those times. Like there are people that got removed from my life, and there are people that stood so freely and so loving in the hallway with me and just turned on a lamp. They're like, hey, let's just sit in the light. And I was like, great, let's do that.
I love that metaphor because I can 100% relate to that. And I love the state of mind that you kind of just framed, where you were in that moment and it was uncomfortable. And I think you can provide a lot of value to, anyone who's listening who might be in that place, specifically mothers who may have lost themselves in this transition into early motherhood.
Totally.
What questions would you beg of them to ask themselves so that they too may have an opportunity to, walk through that cracked door and step into that hallway.
Yeah, I think like in the beginning of motherhood, I mean, first of all, like motherhood, I mean, any parent, I mean, parenting in general, but I can speak from being a mother, obviously specifically, but, you're in such like a survival sacrifice state, right? So everything, your entire, you get completely reprioritized to kind of taking yourself off completely off the table. Like that's just a natural thing. You're focused on this baby, giving it what it needs, all of that. And I think for me, I was trying to get back to for comfort purposes, right? In a moment of survival or a moment of transition or a moment of like, sometimes they hand you this baby and they, as a woman, they just think you know exactly what to do with this baby, and then you kind of shame yourself because you're like, wow, I was meant to do this. I should know. And it's like, no, like every baby's different. Every journey's different. We react differently. There are different phases that we're better at. Like, you know what I mean? I think I'm better at the 5 and 7. My kids are 5 and 7. I think I'm killing it right now. But like, like in the beginning, I was questioning everything, I didn't know if I was doing a good job. But I think what I would give myself permission earlier for if I were to go back is saying, hey, I am going to be a completely different person. And that's okay. What does my life look like now as a mother? And am I finding myself individually from the children, because it's very hard. It's for me, it was very hard to not get, kind of swallowed up by, what they need and what their needs are. And I think it was very important for me to realize, well, like, who am I now? Like, what kind of mother am I? Because I think we go in to that opportunity with expectations on ourselves. And, I was like, when I first started, I was like, I'm going to make all my own baby food. I'm going to do all like, non-throw in disposable diaper. It's like, I could barely shower. Like, you know what I mean? Like the expectations are so different and you have to let some of those things go. So loosen the grip on the expectation of motherhood. And I think now what I'm learning and what I'm learning in business with clients, with myself, is that I really just have to be the vessel that holds it. Like I don't have to solve my kids' issues. I really just have to sit in the hallway with them. Like a lot of times they'll come, we live different environments, like their household over there, my house, like it's different environments. It just is. And there's a transition period. And I'm learning gracefully, how do I nurture my kids in this transition of their process between homes? And me as the lover and the go-getter, I want a solution and I want to take it away. But what I've noticed is it is just offering that grace. Like, let me just hold what you can't carry. Yeah. That's what I do for my clients. What is so stressful that you can't carry right now? Give it to me. Yeah. Let me carry it all. And so I stopped trying to solve more and just carry, like just be, and allow, that position, because that's where I think that people can really open up and feel safe. And then when we feel safe and we feel like comforted and nurtured, then it just flows in it, and we're able to see our direction, because we can't see the path in chaos. Yeah. And that's
painful, Yeah, and especially if you have that mentality where you just want to fix, which, to a certain extent, I would say I have had chapters where I was like that, but I love the sitting in the hallway concept still, because, once you've sat in the hallway, you can also kind of identify when somebody else is.
Absolutely.
They're sitting in their own hallway of whatever, transition that they're in within their life.
Absolutely.
Or they're petrified and they're standing right outside of that hallway.
Right.
And all you could do is really just be there and be present with them.
Yeah.
And, that's like super important. And you talked about how being in the hallway, there are people who sat there with you, and there are people who didn't.
Yeah, and they left.
And that okay. Must have been, I know for me in that moment, it was a rude awakening.
It was, yes. It was some of the longest relationships I had ever invested in, and they weren't, and that was a hard thing to realize. I think in any growth level, any next chapter, things are rearranged, right? And I've learned now that the longer I'm in a hallway, whether it's a grief hallway or whether it's a fear hallway or whatever it looks like, the longer that I'm in there, the greater the room is that I'm walking into. And I know that now. I know that like I can stay in there and I can grieve and be where I need to be and allow and let go, but the room is getting ready. And I am letting the next room get ready. Get the people in the room that need to be in the room where I can connect with and elevate with, you know? And then I'm going to get to the next room, you know?
Yeah.
And so it really is, it isn't all about, you know, me and what I'm processing. It's about the next stage is getting set up. Do I have the humility to allow it to get set up with the right people, places, and things and opportunities?
Yeah, and I'm out here in the hallway getting my head right so that I can take this on.
Yes.
And, you know, like when you're talking about the people, have you ever seen that? I think it's Tyler Perry, and he's like accepting an award, and he's talking about how you rocket blasters, and as you elevate, the rocket blasters fall off.
Yeah.
And how that's like people who, you know, aren't destined to climb the heights that you are. And I can really identify with that, because if I were to really look at who and what I surrounded myself with in the different chapters of my life, they have changed like dramatically. You know, and now I'm in this chapter where also I'm not seeking out the people as much as we're attracting each other.
Absolutely.
And I think there's a big difference between that, because there was a chapter in my life where I was very much seeking out that mutual, you know, if there was a mutual vice that we enjoyed, then you're my guy. Let's do it.
Yeah.
But now it's more about being still, being me, leaning into what drives me.
Right.
And then seeing what attracts.
Absolutely. I
And
completely agree.
the rooms get filled with folks who crave mutual growth.
Right.
Folks who call me out on my shit.
Right.
Folks whose feedback is important to me, and my feedback that I give them is important. And I think that's the gold standard for people who I want to surround myself with.
Yeah.
And, you know, right now I couldn't be more grateful that I'm attracting that, you know,
Yeah,
and obviously
absolutely.
like, you know, like I wouldn't be sitting here with you.
Yeah,
If I wasn't putting out that energy as well.
Absolutely.
So, wow, this I don't know. I just have to take a break for a second. Like this is a great conversation. Quick break to shout out our sponsor, Relive the Moments. Founded by John Lim, they're redefining how we share memories. From tap-to-play photo frames to interactive coasters, they turn ordinary objects into powerful, shareable experiences. Perfect for weddings, events, or milestone moments. Relive, reconnect, reimagine. Check them out at www.relivethemoments.com. Now back to the show.
I appreciate that.
It's like there's so much to unpack. But I like how you talk about the rooms getting ready. Now, once the room is ready, what's your approach?
So I think when I know the next room is ready, I feel free, right? I feel unattached. Whatever I had to process in the hallway, I'm able to like meet where it's at, I'm able to really accept where it's at, you know, and be like, okay, this is you know, I don't feel any pulls to things whether it's anger, whether it's, you know, like conviction, righteousness, all some of these things that sometimes will definitely keep me in my own suffering or victimization or whatever it may be. Like I can dig my heels in. That's my asset and that's my liability. It makes me a very driven, motivated person, and it also makes me suffer longer sometimes. So when I'm ready to go into when the room is ready, I feel very, very calm. And I feel ready to step into it. And there's no resistance there. And then when I walk into the room, it's like, you know, like you said, things are aligned very easily. And you look for different things. It's like, listen, I am willing to help anyone wherever they're at with whatever they need. But I am getting better and better at measuring, you know, what that is, what is their purpose, what are their capabilities, and how can I help them there? I'm getting better at separating what my dreams and goals and visions are from the individuals that I work with every day, right? Like I think for a long time. And I think it's just a maturity thing. You know, I wanted these people because I connect very deeply with people, and I'd be like, I want you to come with me in this opportunity. And it's like people are capable, people are at their own journey in their own hallways and their own limitations, right? And it's their job and responsibility to work through them. And I can help guide, and I can be a guiding post, but I can't get you there. Just how nobody could get me out of what I've gotten myself into or my situations. You know, I had to be the one that sat in the hallway long enough to stand up. You know, I had to make the decision to stand in wherever situation I was in. And so, you know, getting into that next opportunity, I think, you know, it's given me a lot of grace in looking at situations where it's like, all right, I'm here with everything that I bring to the table. You know, I've loosened the grip on my expectations of the opportunity or the person, place, and things, because we never know where I'm going to go. And for me, you know, I think always I started my real estate business with this goal, and I talk to my children with this goal. It's like, you know, how can I help? How can I serve? You know what I mean? And what does that look like? And, you know, having that purpose of like, you know, can I help with my experience, strength, and hope, or what I've been through, or my tools to help you evolve in whatever direction you're willing to evolve into? And I don't have the map on that. Everybody has their own map.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think in my younger years, I was like, well, this is the map, and we're going to go this way, and let's do it. And it's like, you know, that just looked like control. You know, and now it's just like, hey, where do you want to go? What can we do? How can I help you? And when you leave, you leave. You know, and when you stay, you stay.
Yeah, I love that. And so one thing that I'm going to point out is you said experience, strength, and hope, and I know that's like a recovery term. Do you mind talking a little bit about that journey for you too?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I, again, you know, had moved out at a very young age in a nightlife environment of the restaurant industry, which I think attracts two people, you know, two types of people, night owls and recklessness. But I got involved in, you know, some bad behavior at a young age. And so I got clean and sober when I was a few times before that, but when I was 25, I had 11 years, and I had stepped out of that process a couple of years ago, and I'm clean and sober now. But it's interesting, you know, in talking with what we're talking about with different environments, is that, you know, I interact with that environment much differently than I did for the 11 years that it was everything to me. Yeah. And I loved it deeply, you know, and I had to process a lot of personal things in a small area that was a lot, very, very personal to me, that I didn't give permission to be processed. And that was hard. Yeah. And it felt very hard, you know, very, it just was very dismantling for me. And, you know, for me to be able to process what I had to process safely, if you will, because sometimes they say, well, it's not about, you know, necessarily surviving the clean time, it's about surviving the fellowship. And that's very true. And, you know, I had to kind of remove myself from that to have the process that I needed. And I'm really grateful for being able to be in that environment and be in other spiritual environments like yoga, and I was able to really find other aspects of self-growth in different ways that have taken a lot of space in my life. And I'm grateful that I look at that environment very freely. Like I'm able to walk in and out of those doors and be around people that I love and respect. And I'm also able to not feel that that's all that I need to be doing in my life too, you know? And for a long time, that was all that I needed to be doing for a while, you know? So I interact with it differently. And, you know, I am grateful for everything that I've learned in all spiritual arenas that I've placed myself in, because at the end of the day, it is about that growth, you know, and am I willing to continue to grow? And sometimes we need to go to different areas to get that growth. Yeah, no,
I totally agree with you. And I also believe, like, once you've experienced it and you've gone through it, and, you know, I still lean heavily into that community as well. But it's also kind of the point of no return. Like, you don't end up there for no reason. Yeah. And once you're there, it's like, all right, like, I've fucking surrendered, you know? Yeah. But there are other avenues. And I love how you talked about the spiritual component of it, because I think that's super important, because I'm a firm believer that you can be mentally fit, you can be physically fit, but spiritual fitness is something that gives you an aura.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that aura, you could tell when someone's spiritually fit by the way they talk, by the way they carry themselves, and by the way they treat other people.
Absolutely.
So,
and you're never in the hallway alone.
you're never in the hallway alone.
And that's something I think that we all need to remember, and whatever that looks like for anyone, because there are chapters here that we do walk, quote unquote, alone with. And being in recovery or going through the hardships that I went through before I got into recovery built a space in my heart and soul that is the foundation of everything that I do. Like, I would not be the risk taker that I am today. I would not believe in hope in other people and in other opportunities at the delusional level that I do if I didn't know that it was possible. If I didn't walk in the depths of things of my soul and spirit, I would not be able to meet people there in the hallway and say, "Hey, listen, I'm going to turn the light on.
Yeah.
You open the door when you're ready."
Yeah, it's
That's
so funny.
huge.
Well, it's so funny that you say that because, I'm a firm believer that like the end of a chapter transitioning into the beginning of a new chapter can oftentimes be like the loneliest periods. And I remember, I think Justin, you texted me and you were editing one of my clips, and it was a quote that I said along the lines of, "Growth is lonely."
It is.
Growth is lonely.
Success is lonely for sure.
And especially though in those transitional periods, but you said something like powerful. You really aren't ever alone if you're leaning into that spiritual component, faith, God, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
You always have someone there with you.
Absolutely. And a lot of times, something that I believe in, not maybe ever, people believe this, but I believe that through some of my hardships or shame-based behaviors or whatever it may be, I covered my light so well, so crafty. When I was young, I was always this very intense person. I was way too intense for my parents.
Really?
Absolutely. I always was talking about what we weren't supposed to be talking about in a good way. I'm just an emotional, I'm just bright. And I learned to cover that. And so I do believe that for me, in my oneness, I believe that true spiritual is my innate power inside me. And, I, in the hallway, in those moments where there is nobody, that's the uncovering. That's me really dusting off what doesn't work for me anymore. What have I outgrown? What am I still painfully holding on to because I'm afraid that if I let go, who would I be then? And uncovering that deepness where it's okay, I am, in every room I walk into, I am aligned. I am with my loving and caring God. That is also the deepest will for me. I could never, as a conscious human being, imagine what a loving and caring God or universe or power has for me. I just couldn't. I don't have the capacity. And when you uncover all the doubt and all the fear and all the people that told you couldn't, or that you were going to be nothing, or that why would you dare to even dream that big? When you sit in the hallway and you have the honest appraisal to understand that well, no, but what if? What if it's possible? What if I can clear this off and dust this cover off enough where I am just standing in a delusional belief in myself? What can I do then? And let me tell you, things will just align that you never ever thought were possible, and you'll bring all of it. Yeah. And the greatest part about that is I'm also not, you learn not to give that away. Yeah. Nobody, nothing, no experience, no pain, no death, no nothing. No homelessness, no broke, nothing can take that away. Nothing.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's also, I love how you just frame that, where it is also shutting out all the noise.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of noise out there now.
So much.
And there's so much noise being just pumped to you, whether you like it or not. Obviously, we both use social media as a tool for our businesses. It's really easy to, even without the influence of other people, it's really easy to just get your own brain whirring.
Absolutely.
And saying, should I be doing this?
Yeah.
Why are they doing it better than me?
Yeah.
Or, all these different things that just, we frame these questions. And oftentimes for me, I get these people who email me all the time and DM me, and they're like, pay for followers and do all these things, or you should be doing that. And for me, sometimes I'll entertain these conversations.
Right.
And I'm like, all right, like they all just are doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing something different and they want me to conform to this model, which, you know what, may be successful.
Right.
But is it authentic? And are they,
Yes.
is it an audience that I even care to capture?
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's something that's really important to me because, you know, I think people look at all these other digital metrics and they look at it as validating.
Right.
For me, what I find validating is when I get a new follower and they reach out to me and they go, I listened to your last episode and it motivated me to do X, Y, and Z.
Absolutely.
Or I heard Laura Beth's story and I'm sitting in a hallway right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
That means more to me
Same.
than 20,000 likes.
Yeah.
And I think that we're in this culture where there's a lot of people who put more stock in a quantity of likes by strangers than they do in really being true to who they are.
Yeah, we're in a dopamine collection culture.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's nice. We can navigate through the shields of this culture very, very easily. But whether that gets us to the top or not, I can tell you that getting to the top that way, it's going to be really, really earth-shattering and lonely. It's very dismantling when that doesn't work anymore. Because I've been there too. I've been there where the transactions didn't fulfill me or whatever it was, you know? Mm-hmm. And, you know, I love what you shared about like, you know, I have a lot of people will ask me, be like, well, aren't you afraid? You know, how are you fearless? And it's not that the voice ever goes away. It is always there. It's just it's not as loud. Mm-hmm. And I don't give it as much reference. And there are days where I give it a lot of reference and you know what I mean? And I can only, you know, eat and shower and, you know, get through the day. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Right. But like, it's not that it goes away, right? Like I am human first in anything that I do, just like anyone I interact with. And I think that it's important to realize that, hey, it's not about the voice going away or us thinking that, you know, it's not going to be there. It's about like, where am I going to shift my energy to and what voice am I going to feed? And, you know, why not? It's like, what do we have to lose if there is, and I think for me, like it's a beige flag, if you will, when I'm going towards something and I'm scared as hell. When I'm like, whoa, this is, I don't know if, when that voice is almost as even as what I want to do, I know I am walking into a hallway where I am going to just expand so greatly beyond measure. It's okay that the voice is loud. Take that as like as a crumb to keep going, you know, as a stepping stone. Like, you know, before I get on stage or before I do things, it's like, you can't do this. What do you think? I'm like, okay, thank you so much for sharing. Like, I'm going to do it anyway. Yeah. And we built that in restaurant industry too. It's like, you know, like, thank you for sharing that your steak was not, well, you know, that it wasn't, well, okay, thank you. Yeah. We just keep moving. We just keep going through it. But like, my guiding posts are different today. The things that kept me from walking through to a different hallway are now the things that open the doors for me. You know what I mean?
Totally.
And it's special.
You know, I also think, you know, you said something about how the voice of fear, the voice of doubt, it's not that it's not there. It's just that it doesn't hold the same power as you and it's not as loud.
Yes.
And I think that's really important because sometimes those voices can be the voices of people who we love.
Oh, yes. Oh, my goodness.
And
yes.
Oftentimes we, grow to resent them because it's like, why would you doubt me here? Mm-hmm. Why would you project your own fear? And then we, you know, kind of built a little resentment against people we love. Yeah. When really, what do they know?
Right, right.
You know,
I anonymously love my mother. Do you know what I mean? I have to remove the label of mother on my mother to love her. Do you know what I mean? Because if I label her as a mother in my heart, I don't know how to meet her. I don't know how to get through that. And, you know, some of my transactions I worked with one of my aunts like for 9 months to get her house listed. And then, and she was like, let's check in September. And I check in September and she's like, oh, I'm listing with another agent. Like sometimes it is the family, you know? And so I agree with you where it's like when you're doing something generationally, or when you're doing something that like is igniting that deep like fear, like we have to be willing to put people where they stand, like the capabilities, like, hey, like I know this, like me and my mother, like she was a stay-at-home mom her whole life. You know what I mean? Like that's what, so when I work outside of that, when I started to build a career, it was always like, I don't know, Laura, like you're doing too much. Like, don't, it's all out of love. But when I was building my career, all I could hear was doubt. That you didn't believe in me. How
Yeah. That, and, I had to have a difficult conversation with my dad where I was like, you've never done this before.
Exactly.
So to get entrepreneurial advice from someone who worked for a corporation for 40 fucking years.
Right.
And granted, you made a great living. Granted, you have a great pension. Listen, for all intents and purposes, you are a success, but you're a boomer success.
Right. Am I going to the right source for empowerment?
Yeah.
Right. And we have to go to people that like have walked that path. And listen, a lot of people work a 9-to-5 with benefit. And that's amazing. I think that's what I mean? And their high points are going to the pumpkin patch for Halloween. Like, and they're mine too, but I'm not discounting that, but I'm saying, do you know what I mean? Like, it's just, it's like, I'm trying less now to get people, like, look at where they're at, what their needs are, but I'm going to that inner light and in that inner source for that validation. I'm going to like, you know what I mean? Like I'm checking myself more and more when I start to go off the trail of the insecurity and doubt and say, you know what, listen, I am who I am and I will align with who is supposed to align.
Yeah.
And maybe you're with me a day, maybe you're with me for 10 years, maybe 2 weeks. Like, how can I serve you? How can I help? And good luck.
Yeah. Well, it's also important when you're in that hallway, these people will be there with you.
Oh, good point. Absolutely.
They will be there with you because they're family.
Yeah.
And they may be those annoying voices. And for me, like when I'm in, I understood this from the last hallway that I was in. And that was that hallway of darkness in pre-recovery. That the people who are in there with me are in there for the long haul. But doesn't mean they know what's best for me.
Right.
And I have to be really selective of who I invite into the hallway.
Yep.
Because there have been points in my life when I was in these hallways and I just wanted everyone to come because of that fear of loneliness and the dangers of isolation and all these things that I felt that I needed. Now, I know that there's people who can really actually add value to that waiting room.
Yeah.
And I'm comfortable asking them for help.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm comfortable picking their brains. But, I just, God, this is such a great conversation. Like, I just love that, the element that you're talking about, because I think there's so many people who are in these transitional spaces or who are in the early seeds of a business or who are leveling up their business, which in itself is a transition.
Absolutely.
And it's really important to embrace the mindset that you've so beautifully laid out to my audience, because change can be beautiful if you let it and if you equip it with the right tools and the right people.
Right. Absolutely. And allowing people to be who they are. And I think, I agree with you. It's like I had to really allow people to take position, even when I wanted them to take that position so badly. Like I wanted them to be in that position. I had to grieve that they were not capable of the position. And it's okay that they can sit wherever they need to sit, you know?
Well, also like, sometimes when we're in these hallways, we want people to tell us what we want to hear.
Yeah, and sometimes, listen, I want someone to tell me what to do. Like sometimes I'm like, listen, I'm decision fatigued.
Heard that, yeah.
Like,
it's like, just tell me what to do. I'll do it. If it makes me feel better.
Yeah, and if it takes some of the pressure off, like, being in the hallway is pressure inducing. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But yeah, I agree with you.
And also I think it's also like I've stopped really chasing the desire to always feel good.
Yeah, it just doesn't exist.
Like, because really,
reality.
Well, the biggest growth leaps I've had were in discomfort.
Suffering is grace.
Yeah.
It is grace. It is redirection. Suffering, and I know that's a strong term, but there are times where, you know what I mean, that those have been the most optimal points in my life. Because if I didn't suffer, if I didn't engage or go into those spaces open-heartedly, no matter what, if it was the relationship, if it was the business opportunity with their client, if I didn't bring all of me, no matter how painful it was, I would not have put myself back together the way that I put myself together to be built for the next opportunity that I didn't even see. Suffering's the work.
Yeah.
Suffering is understanding, like, wow, who am I like, who am I with money and success and still lonely? What is that? Like I thought this was it. Who am I at the edge of motherhood with 2 under 2 and shaming myself because I don't feel like I'm good enough in the bottom of the living room, or not connecting as deeply as I want to with my children, at under 2, like, and really sitting with that, like, and forgiving myself or accepting that that's not, and making that move to be different, not trying to make that work. Yeah. I spent a lot of time trying to make what didn't work for me because it wasn't, either I outgrew it, because that's the other thing, as entrepreneurs and people that look at spiritual growth or look at, purpose at the level that you do, we grow really, really fast.
Yeah.
Super fast, and that's okay. That's an asset, but I can't expect people to grow at the level that I grow. Not that I'm growing better or different. It's just we all grow in different directions, but me thinking that like we're all going to be on the same space is causing me to suffer. And it's causing me to stay in arenas that I outgrew for too long. Like, I would have stayed in that arena as a stay-at-home mom through shame and guilt because I thought, well, this is what I told myself I was in my lifetime. Yeah. I made a decision at 20 to be a stay-at-home mom. Now it's it. I was in pain, and that can be a lonely space where, and I'm grateful that I had the courage to be like, well, what could it look like? And draw it on the board. You know what I mean? And I drew it in the hallway. My hallways are full of dream boards,
Yeah, I love that. You really embody the personal development journey that accompanies entrepreneurship. And, I had a friend, John Mendez, on this episode. Do you know John Mendez?
Yes, I'm trying to do his, yes, we talked. Yes.
He's one of the greatest.
He is.
I love him.
We had a great conversation.
And when I had him on this podcast, he said, entrepreneurship is the greatest personal development journey that you will ever embark on. And you just embodied it in the way that you so eloquently talked about how you've leveled up in your career. And I want to talk about your career.
Yeah.
And like we haven't even talked about your career, which is fine because like this
right.
It's so much value backed into like what we just spoke about. But you're in this chapter. What would you call this chapter of your career, and where do you see what do you see on the horizon?
Yeah, no, great question. I mean, I think this chapter is definitely leverage. So I do about 70 deals a year as a real estate agent by, individually. And this year I've really worked on mentoring some people underneath me, helping refer some of that business. And I am working more into business development. So working with roofing companies, HVAC companies, talking about how are you going to adapt into the solar environment and industry, because we are the second most expensive state in the nation for electricity. And looking about talking with them about like, all right, how can we expand and leverage you, in a way that isn't a high capital investment, like giving you the tools for success and talking to their sales team, because that's a very different type of sales than what I come from, right? I come from emotional transactions. They come from product sales environment, which is usually hard selling, sign the deal. Yeah. And so I've worked with a lot of companies in bridging those two together, because the reality is people they buy from emotion and connection, and they support it with facts. And trust. Right, and trust and really genuine and, perspective. And so that's what I've been working on, now. But my long-term, and I shouldn't even say long-term, but my, where I see myself or where I feel the clearest with my inner power and God would be speaking to arenas about, self-development and igniting people's passion, because I know what it's like to be in that mundane place and wonder why I'm not fulfilled. I was there in motherhood and I was there in my career. I should feel so good. Why am I not, why is my passion not ignited here?
Yeah.
And being able to reframe my life to get my needs met in that space so that there is connection, because it's very easy to build a business and then feel almost outside of your business as you're doing it, having it operate and it being very like generic, and you have the greatest intentions of connection, but it can feel almost like this outside entity. And that's an isolating place, because then you're shaming, why don't I feel connected to something that I built? Why does this feel like it's drawing from me and not, evolving? So I really want to focus on helping others evolve. What turns your light on? What gives you that passion? You know what I mean? Because that's where I think is the root of everything. And what I've learned in the businesses that I have built and the restaurants that I've been involved in is that, like, if you don't have that at the base, it is a lot of liability and difficulty at the top, and you meet yourself at the top with people that don't align with that, and it's harder to reinvent your passion and purpose at the top if you don't grow from that place. The money comes, those things are, I built my business because I wanted to buy a house. I never thought I would own a house in my life. From coming from a homeless individual, I never, ever thought I would own. That's why I got into the industry. And I built my career in a seller's market as a buyer's agent, keeping that hope and belief for people that were in rental situations that, I don't know, LB, I just don't think I could ever own. If I can do it, you can do it. And so I built my entire business off that purpose and dream. And so I think I want to do that on a grander, I shouldn't say I think, I know I want to do that on a grander scale, not just with houses, not just with businesses, but with people. Like, where is that purpose and that passion, and what turns your light on? And what are the barriers that aren't allowing you to do it? Is it because you're afraid that you won't pay the bills? Is it because other people expect you to be this person in their lives? That keeps us locked and loaded.
Oftentimes.
Right? I get locked and loaded off the projections of who people think this super powerhouse LB, right?
Yeah.
I'll walk into an environment, I'll ride that projection like it's a roller coaster. Yeah. And then I feel drawn from, I feel like awkwardly vulnerable.
Me?
Yeah. Was that even me? Who was that? Yeah. And that's where the disconnection becomes. We get into these, these spaces or these identities, and we can play those roles, right? But we got to have a home base. If I don't know what my home base is, then everything, no matter what it produces, I'm not going to feel that I'm doing what I feel drawn to and called to. It's just going to feel like another thing that I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, totally. I love that. Wow. I'm blown away by this conversation, and I could talk to you for hours.
Yeah.
I have a couple questions that I always do at the end.
Yeah, of course.
What does the word purpose mean to you?
Yeah. So I definitely think purpose has evolved, right? So I think for when I was young, I think purpose was actually goals, right? I just had the ability to put goals on the table, and I thought that was purpose. I think today my purpose looks like listening, holding space, helping when I can. How can I support you? And, just helping people elevate at their capacity, and whatever that looks like, whether it's business or professional. That's my purpose.
Yeah, I love that. And, most of the times when people answer that question, I know that they're leading purposeful lives when it's less about them and more about the impact that they're going to have on other people.
Absolutely.
So, obviously, refer to the entire conversation. And, what advice would you give to someone in that hallway who is on that journey of finding their next purpose? Yeah,
no, I think that's such a great question. Design it, be specific with what you want it to look like. You're sitting in the hallway, and whether it's, I was sitting in a hallway and my family being, broken up, and I had made the decision to break up my young family. It's like, okay, well, what did I want my life to look like? What did I want mended there? And right in designing that in my mind, what do I want? Where do I want the wholesome to be? And I think, what I would tell someone that's sitting in a hallway is that, like, have space and faith and hope that whatever is being prepared for you is intricately being prepared and lining up in the most detail. Like I tell my clients with houses, like, I've seen houses come back to buyers where we've lost bids. Like, you cannot miss what is meant for you. So write those details, be specific with what the next room looks like, and allow yourself that grace and forgiveness. Like, there is nowhere that you are supposed to be other than exactly where you are. And I believe that I am meant to shed every tear in this lifetime that I'm meant to shed. And I compressed a lot of them. So sit in the hallway and cry. Sit in the hallway and be angry. Sit in the hallway is my safe space for so many things, and allow joy to be present, whether she's in the corner or not. Allow it, because it's a really, really fertile ground for the deepness that builds who we are and really gives our purpose light.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Laura Beth Collinson, LB. Super grateful to have you. If you can actually talk to my audience, let them know how they could reach you. Let them know if you have anything upcoming. You just be using that camera.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. You can reach me at 860-262-2753. My email is laurabethrealty@gmail.com. I am helping leverage businesses with roofing companies to adapt into solar. And so you can reach me anytime. We can set up a business meeting. We can drop a plan. I can speak to sales teams on how to interact with their clients based on that whole experience of purpose and what we can serve them with. But yeah, I'm here and I'm ready in action in any way that I can help anybody. Thanks so much.
Perfect. You guys can also reach out to me and I can connect you directly with Laura as well. Obviously, I want to thank you for making the trip down here on Halloween. Nonetheless, I appreciate you. And I want to thank Justin back there, doing, I think this is the first interview you've done for me with Kai Visions. So super grateful for the team here at Kai Visions, Justin, Claudio. You guys ever need any content related material, want to launch your own podcast, want to do some marketing, reach out to me. I'll connect you with them here in the greater New York metro area. And I want to thank my sponsor, Relive the Moments, their CEO, John Lim, just such a great partner in not only the podcast, but in the events that I do. And obviously, feel free to reach out to me directly. You can visit my website, www.adamvora.com, ADAMVOHRA, and you can see all that I am doing. I am currently in the process of building out the Growth Gala. There's going to be plenty of information there for you to reach me to participate, whether it's partnerships, whether it's being involved in any sponsorships, whatever. I'd be happy to entertain those discussions and get you involved. And thank you to all of you who like, subscribe, share. At the end of the day, the more you interact and the more you DM me is the faster we can grow this community of purpose-driven individuals, reach a broader audience of people who are searching for their purpose or are lost within their purpose. So thank you so much. And till next time, guys.
Good.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Finding Purpose podcast. I'm your host, Adam Vora, and I'm so grateful to have you here. This podcast is all about